Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Alex Fink. I'm a Senior Vice President with Lumanity, and I'm here with...
Ed Saltzman, Senior Strategic Advisor at Lumanity, and happy to be at BioEU in Stockholm.
Thanks a lot, and Ed, good seeing you again. Last year when we met at BioEurope in Munich, we talked about biotechs and the importance of commercializing in Europe. But this year I wanted to talk to you about commercial readiness for biotechs, and also associated with the recent white paper you and I wrote on this topic. But before we dive into that, what do you think of the conference?
Conference is tremendous. It's a tremendous gathering of innovators, right? Therapeutic innovators, which is what is needed all over the world. But there's a script to the conference that unfortunately is a little frustrating, I think, to a number of the pre-commercial stage biotech companies that are primarily here for the purpose of obtaining a large pharmaceutical partnership for their innovation. And given the crowded nature of companies pursuing multiple therapeutic modalities and a lot of crowding around targets, and frankly, just not a lot of large pharmaceutical buyers, there exists today a massive massive difference between supply and demand. And that's not really accruing in favor of the biotech companies who we'll call sellers. Of the 650 biotech companies approximately that had brought assets as far as phase 3, if you look at the number of phase 3 deals that large pharma did in all of 2023, full year 2023, it was 9. So you have 650 legitimately late-stage companies with late-stage de-risked assets looking for pharmaceutical partnerships, but a very low chance of securing just based on the data. Indeed, if a product has proceeded as far as phase 3, it is much more likely that the drug will actually survive attrition and regulatory challenges and can actually get approved, okay? The challenge is that without a partnership, most companies think they won't be able to commercialize.
Yeah, the interesting thing is we hear two myths why that is the case. One, it's a general myth that biotech should not think about commercialization by themselves at all. And the second myth, coming back to how many companies have a phase 3 asset, is that if they are still unpartnered in phase 3, that they are either high-risk assets or poor quality assets. What do you think about it?
I'm glad you asked about that. I really am. I think it's a very, very important thing to ponder. I think to take on the first, which I do characterize as a myth. The large pharma companies that are here that have all their booths over here, you know the famous names, they have hundreds of people and they are very good at diligence, let's just say it. But they're not perfect, okay? So their actually dismissal or lack of interest in an asset does not necessarily pertain to the quality of the asset. Indeed, often pharma makes mistakes, okay? If we relied entirely on large pharma's diligence, we would have never had a Genentech, we would have never had a Biogen, we would have never had many of the rare disease companies, the Alexions of the world, would never exist. Genzymes would have never have existed in all the benefits they brought to patients. So hopefully we can put that myth to the side. The second myth is more of a financial one. It says that because large pharma isn't interested, then the drugs don't have considerable potential, and as an investor, I should be concerned with that. The truth is, a product with 250, 300 million, 500 million US dollars of revenue perhaps is not going to be attractive to a large pharmaceutical company looking to replace a massive revenue gap due to loss of exclusivity that they're facing, but certainly, almost certainly, can drive a large multiple in a company that proves itself capable of self-commercializing. So I think the theme, and I'd like to spend the rest of this brief chat discussing it, and it's certainly mentioned in our white paper, is the challenge of self-commercializing in companies that haven't necessarily ever considered that they would be commercializers.
Indeed, and there are kind of 4 challenges we see on the way to commercial thinking. One is often we see an underpreparedness for commercialization. In general, there's a high focus on the science, which completely underestimates the complexity of commercialization. Second, companies perceive pressure from the investor side, focusing on rapid exit post proof of concept, which conflicts with the necessity to also put aside investments for commercialization and for commercial efforts. Third, there's obviously a high complexity with these advanced therapies and the necessity to think about innovative commercial strategies, which companies often lack the respective experience with. And thirdly, the development strategy itself is mostly focused on clinical endpoints only, but not considering commercial viability.
That's absolutely correct, Alex. And I would add just one or two more things for consideration. Preparing for commercialization and thinking about building a commercial culture is not, and I want to be clear, is not about building a sales force, okay? It's about bringing commercial thinking, as you've just indicated, into all facets of the operation that are looking to de-risk the operation from the standpoint of an investor, but ultimately, and most importantly, getting the innovation to patients, okay? My belief is that biotech collectively has not done a good job. In fact, I could argue that they have failed in doing the most important thing, which is not innovating, because they've been massively good at innovating, great at innovating, but actually being the ones that are responsible to get their innovation to patients. And that's what this is all about in the end.
Yeah, and it's interesting you're saying this, and as we discovered in our paper, we see a couple of things companies can do to make sure they're getting an increased commercial preparedness. One is to bring in the right senior leadership, which has the commercial expertise and experience. Secondly, plan for commercialization early on, so not just consider clinical milestones, but also commercial milestones. Think about an adaptive communication plan to all stakeholders, thinking again both about commercial and clinical readiness. And finally, supplement their experience with external parties who can bring this experience and expertise to the mix.
And I do want to say, given our expertise in the commercial journey, Lumanity is approached quite often by companies with no commercial experience who are indeed thinking about commercialization. Often that wasn't their first choice, and it turns out that, it's plan B. Mm-hmm. What I want to say, just to react to something you've said, is that in almost every case, although there are situations that can be repaired and the commercialization can be made successful, in the vast majority of cases, the job would be easier and have a higher probability of success if there was an early start.
Yes.
Why aren't there early starts? Their early starts are really because from an investor base, the investors are not willing traditionally to support commercialization or commercial planning until the asset is actually de-risked. So if I could come back to where we started, of those 650 assets, a lot of them are going to want commercial strategy and are going to want to bring commercial thinking to their organizations. In many, many cases, they should not have waited for proof of concept, okay? In fact, generating a commercial plan and commercial preparedness before proof of concept is a sure way to increase the net present value of the asset, just speaking from the basis. But also, it focuses the organization like nothing else on the importance of getting the therapy to patients, which in the end is how I define commercialization.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Ed. Great discussion. And I can say it's time to rethink.
Yes.
And already very much looking forward to seeing you next year for the next discussion.
Hopefully,
reach
won't
out
take that long.
to us to discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.